What skills make a good kill team player? Are there any other transferable skills from other board games?
Okay. I'm sure there are transferable skills from other board games. So I think the main thing that so I'm going to answer this a bit more like ethereally. Like I'm going to go through the process that I think people do when they start kill team and how they sort of go through the game, right? So when you're a beginner at kill team, your core focus is on learning the core rules, and that's really where you're at. And then you start to learn your own team's rules, right? So like when you're absolute beginner, you're just focusing on how do I play the game. When you start becoming a more casual player, you go, all right, I now know how to play the game, and I'm learning my team's rules, and I'm making sure that I get all those right. And I now understand roughly what like how I can win and how I can use my team's abilities to win the game. And that's kind of where you're at when you're a casual player. When you start getting to the competitive level, that's where really you start changing from I know my team's abilities to, I know my team's synergies. I know what my tack ops are. I know when to flex them. I now know like the nuance of the equipment that I'm going to pick. I'm getting quite like proficient at it, and I really know what the win condition is. So I'm not just going to score points like willy-nilly, but I'm actually looking at okay, I know what's going to maximize my score this game, and it's like and it's that focusing on VP, Vice, killing models or anything like that to really start focusing on the win. So it's like I now understand what wins me the game, and I'm going to make sure that I do well on my tac ops to achieve that. I'm going to use my rules effectively to do that, and I'm going to really be good at scoring the primary. And I think when you start to get to the tournament winning stage is when you take it to the next level, which is your opponent's rules as well as your own, and their abilities, and their tac ops. And the next step beyond you maximizing your own points is learning how to deny your opponents, right? So as soon as you can start going, okay, well, I'm playing against this particular faction, so I know these are the tac ops that they would like to be able to do. This is how I think they're going to try and score them. And actually, I need to be able to do something on turn one so that I can deny them that. So maybe it's something like recover item. You need to have a model that you think is going to be able to move into the mid board and with 3 APL contest their recover item turn one. So they have to commit more than they want to be able to get that point. Or maybe it's, I don't know, you're playing security or a team that has security playing against Vetguard, and you go, you know what, I need to make sure that I move enough models forward so that I can get into the center if they play central control, or onto the center line to be able to do that, or to threaten their escort operative or whatever it's going to be. And then the next one after that is like learning their synergies and then understanding what their priority threats are, right? So like being able to go, let's say you're playing against Vetguard and you go, right, I need to kill that demo guy, right? Like that guy is the threat, or understanding exactly what their threat range is and being able to play around that and going, right, at the end of turning point one, I now know what your team's rules are, and I can prioritize who I'm going to kill in which order to minimize your ability to do damage to me, maximize my VP, and minimize your VP. And that's like the next step. So that, I think, what makes a good kill team player is like rules knowledge. And that comes from a growth of core rules, team rules, and then enemy rules, right? And I think that's kind of like the process of growth that you go through. And the hardest players that you play against are the ones that know your team and you don't have to explain to them, right? There is no gotchas because they go, oh, that's the endurance that you have, right? And he's got relentless or whatever. And you go, yeah. And they know your rules just as well as you do. They know your ploys, right? That you're playing blooded and they go, oh, right, you're going to try and suicide your guy next to your leader to stop your leader dying. So I'm not going to take Headhunter in this matchup because I don't think it's worth, whatever it's going to be, right? So you know what they can do to be able to play around it. And then I think, focusing on that win condition is the next bit, and understanding what categorically what's going to win you the game, right? And I take it to the next step as well. So it's not just how do I max those points or how do I reduce my opponent's points to the minimum, but like in each decision, it's understanding which creates the biggest delta, right? So like my model has these, 3 options. One of them gives me 1 point. One of them denies you 1 point. And option 3 gives me gives me 1 and denies you 1, whatever it's going to be. And understanding in that moment where you go, oh, actually, I'm going to take that option because it's going to deny you a point, and maybe the other point that I can score, I can get that back on another turn, or whatever it's going to be. Like, there's another option to do that one. And it's understanding immediately in that moment where you can go, let's say it's a difference between a tack op or a primary. I can make that tack op point up next turn, but I can't make up that primary point next turn. That primary point is gone, right? And not as is it gone for me to gain, but it's you've already got it, and I can't take that away from you. So it's being able to identify those things in that exact moment and being able to switch them. The next thing I want to say is risk management, right? So like this inherently is a game of probabilities. It's a game of risks, and it's a game of understanding like when to take them and when not to. All right. So a great example, let's say you're playing against like Hand of the Archon. All right. They're a really interesting team because they're a momentum team, right? They can run away with it. So actually Hand of the Archon somewhat rewards you for playing high risk early, right? So like if your opponent understands that and they meet you with that and you both take high risk, well, actually that can really hurt them early on, and suddenly boom, they're out of the game because they lost too many models turning point 1 or turning point 2, and it's irrecoverable for them. But if you let them run away with it because you play a really low risk game, then suddenly they pick up the pace, pick up momentum. Before you know it, they're in a winning condition quite early on. So I think it's about understanding that, and understanding that it's very dynamic. So it's not just like every game, don't take any risk turning point 1, take maximum risk turning point 4. That's not necessarily true, right? Like there are certain games where you have to, again, looking back on that win condition, identify where you might no longer be winning, and you might need to identify that midway through turning point 2 and go, unless I take significantly more risk now, then I'm going to lose this game by, even if it's by 1 point, then it's already a done game. So I suddenly need to start taking more risks. So if your opponent gets really hot with their dice, maybe you need to start again applying more risk to be able to make up for it, or vice versa. Maybe you can say, actually, this is where I need to take less risk because I've got the points I need to on this turn, and I've got the secondaries I need to on this turn. And actually, by slow playing this and taking very low risk, I can actually now get what I need to at the end of it. So understanding that risk management, understanding probabilities is going to really help you. And I say definitely use the kill team calculator, right? So like for the key things that you're doing, use the maths on it and understand what the key differences are. Because you can go away from it and go, all right, I've done the maths, and I know that if I do 2 rounds of shooting, I should kill you. 1 round of shooting is going to injure you, whatever it's going to be. Or I'm expecting this much damage. All right, so then you're not too at the time, like you're not too triggered by it where suddenly you go, oh, this has gone massively wrong, because you go, actually it was only over 40% chance to kill anyway. So I understand the risk that I'm doing, and I understand the likely outcome of the results of me rolling the dice before they happen. And finally, this one I'm going to steal from Vanguard Tactics because I really like it. And it's a very succinct way of saying what I want to say. But it's trade CP for VP. All right, so that's one of their things is like when you're spending those CP, you only have 7 per game. There might be a way for you to get more based on your kill team, but generically you only have 7 per game. Every time you spend them, you have to be really thinking about what is it that what is it you're spending on, right? And is that actually helping you achieve what you need to do for the game? So have a rough idea of your budget and understand that what that CP reroll is actually costing you, rather than just rolling through it. Because if that CP is unlocking a stratagem that you need to fundamentally score a tack op or whatever it's going to be in a subsequent turn, and you've burnt it, well then you're in a massive, like, you're in the hurt locker, right? Like you can't come back from that. Or maybe it's like you can go, I'm playing Seek and Destroy, so me getting rerolls on my attack dice is really important, and I need that to be able to achieve my secondaries, and therefore it's a good investment. Or maybe it's like I'm playing Security, and my game plan is just to tar pit this team and not lose models until later on. Well, I'm going to spend on defensive rerolls, whatever it's going to be. And so I think that's a good way of doing it. So trading CP for VP. And the final point, is just adaptability. I think once you know what your opponent can do, you know your own team, you understand the probability of your actions, you're focused on the mission, you're focused on the win conditions. It's just being able to constantly look at what's going on the table and go, oh, you know what, my original game plan has gone wrong for whatever reason. My opponents predicted it and they've done this. So I'm going to do this now. I'm going to mix it up to be able to change it. I think those are a bit ethereal, but hopefully there's some tangible stuff from that. Like if you're out there practicing and trying to figure on it, what you want to do, I think I would try and do that. So my advice would be, read the rules as much as you can, not just for your own kill team, but for your opponent's kill teams. Understand what they can do. Use the kill team calculator as best as you can. Read the attack ops, not just the ones you want to use, but your ones your opponents use. And then be strict to yourself when you want to spend that CP. Maybe budget before you get to the table, and then be adaptable. Don't just stick to a singular game plan because that's all you've ever done. But don't be afraid to adapt because your opponent's probably seeing it coming if it's a standard meta play. Any thoughts on that one, Connor?
No, that's good. I think you nailed it.
That brings us to the end of the episode. Hopefully you found something new or useful while listening, and if you did, throwing us a like would be greatly appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss any episodes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on the bell so you get notifications as soon as the next one drops. It really is the best way to help a small channel like ours. And if you can't wait and you do want early access, we have a Patreon where you get exclusive access to all our content ahead of time. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Just drop a comment below and we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host Ryan. This has been Turning Point Tactics, and we'll see you next week.